The chamber stretched high above Daniel Brooks as he stood alone on the platform, designed for those seeking judgment from the Galactic Council. 3 years of negotiations, 3 years of carefully worded proposals, 3 years of humanity presenting its best face to the galaxy, and it all came down to this moment. The air tasted different here, processed through alien systems that maintained the perfect atmosphere for 17 different species, but left humans feeling like they were breathing something not quite right. Daniel's chest felt tight, but he kept his shoulders back and his eyes forward. Around him, the council members sat in their designated sections, each area tailored to their species' needs. The Velthrian representatives shimmered behind crystalline barriers, their bodies made of living mineral that refracted light into rainbow patterns. The Kashari floated in tanks of liquid methane, their tentacles moving in slow, deliberate patterns that Daniel had learned to read as signs of disapproval. The Talvori perched on heated platforms, their feathered bodies occasionally ruffling in what passed for their version of thoughtful consideration. 47 species in total, all of them watching, all of them preparing to decide Earth's fate. The High Chancellor of the Velthrian spoke first, his voice transmitted through speakers that made the crystalline tones understandable to human ears. Ambassador Brooks, humanity has petitioned this council for membership 3 times. Each time we have asked for more evidence of your species' readiness to join the galactic community. Each time you have provided what we requested. Yet the fundamental concerns remain unchanged. Daniel swallowed hard but kept his voice steady when he responded. High Chancellor, humanity has transformed itself over the past century. We have ended our global conflicts. We have cleaned our oceans and restored our forests. We have reached out to the stars not with weapons but with open hands. What more can we offer to prove our intentions? A Kashari representative rippled forward in its tank, the translation device rendering its chemical signals into words. Your species still maintains standing armies on your homeworld. You manufacture weapons of terrible destructive power. Your entertainment glorifies violence. Your history is written in blood. These are not the signs of a peaceful species. Every species here has a history of conflict, Daniel argued, gesturing to the assembled council. The Talvori unified their world through conquest. The Kashari fought a civil war that lasted 3 centuries. The Velthrians exterminated 2 rival species before achieving spaceflight. Yet all of you are valued members of this council. Why is humanity held to a different standard? The chamber erupted in a cacophony of alien sounds as representatives reacted to Daniel's words. Some species considered his statement offensive, others found it accurate, and still others seemed indifferent. The High Chancellor raised one crystalline limb and silence gradually returned. The difference, Ambassador, is that those conflicts are behind us. Your species is still young, still volatile. You have had interstellar travel for less than 1 human century. Most species in this council waited 10 times that long before seeking membership. You rush forward without understanding the responsibilities that come with joining our community. Daniel felt frustration building in his chest, but he forced it down.
Getting angry now would only prove their point.
We ask only for the chance to prove ourselves. Place restrictions on our expansion if you must. Monitor our activities. Give us probationary membership. But don't close the door entirely. The Talvori delegate spoke next, her voice carrying the clicking harmonics of her species' native language beneath the translation. We have discussed this matter extensively among ourselves, Ambassador Brooks. The vote was taken before you entered this chamber. We called you here to deliver our decision and to explain our reasoning. Daniel's heart sank. They had already decided. This entire proceeding was just theater, a formality to make the rejection seem fair. The High Chancellor continued. The Galactic Council has voted unanimously to deny humanity's petition for membership. Furthermore, we are imposing restrictions on human expansion beyond your home system. You are forbidden from establishing colonies on any world within Council-claimed space. You may travel through Council territory for purposes of trade and cultural exchange, but settlement is prohibited. These restrictions will remain in place for a minimum of 500 standard years, at which point humanity may petition for membership again. The words hit Daniel like physical blows. 500 years, longer than human spaceflight had existed, longer than most human governments had survived. It was a death sentence for humanity's dreams of joining the galactic community. This is unjust, Daniel said, his voice harder now, anger finally seeping through despite his best efforts. You condemn us for being young while ensuring we can never mature. You restrict our growth while claiming we need more experience. You speak of fairness while denying us the same opportunities you granted every other species in this chamber. Your protest is noted, the High Chancellor replied, and Daniel could hear no emotion in the translated voice. The decision stands. You have 1 standard month to recall any human vessels or installations within Council space. After that time, any violations will be met with force. This hearing is concluded. Daniel stood frozen on the platform as the Council members began departing, each group leaving through exits designed for their particular needs. None of them looked back at him. None of them showed any sign of doubt about their decision. To them, this was a minor administrative matter, hardly worth remembering. To humanity, it was the end of everything they had worked toward for generations. The journey back to Earth took 14 days, but Daniel barely noticed the passage of time. He spent his hours staring at the stars through the viewport of his transport ship, wondering how many of those distant lights shone on worlds humanity would never be allowed to visit. His assistant, a young diplomatic aide named Julie Carson, tried to comfort him with optimistic words about appealing the decision, but Daniel knew the truth. The Council had spoken. In their eyes, humanity was a problem to be contained, not a potential partner to be welcomed. When his ship finally entered Earth's atmosphere, Daniel felt the weight of failure pressing down on him. He would have to face President Elizabeth Hart and explain how 3 years of diplomatic effort had ended in complete rejection. He would have to watch as humanity's dreams of expansion died, strangled by the arbitrary restrictions of species that saw themselves as humanity's betters. The landing pad at the Capitol complex was nearly empty when his ship touched down. Daniel had requested a quiet arrival, wanting to avoid media attention until after he had briefed the president. But as he walked down the ramp, he saw Elizabeth Hart herself waiting for him, flanked by General Marcus Sullivan and Chief Engineer Helen Price. "Madam President," Daniel began, but Elizabeth held up one hand to stop him. "I watched the entire proceeding," she said quietly. "The Council made their decision clear. Now we need to make ours." Daniel followed her into a secure briefing room where maps of nearby star systems covered the walls. Marcus stood at attention while Helen pulled up holographic displays showing ship production schedules and colony equipment manufacturing rates. Elizabeth turned to face Daniel, and he was surprised to see no disappointment in her eyes. Instead, she looked determined, almost energized. "Ambassador Brooks, I need you to understand something. The Council made a critical mistake today. They assumed that isolating humanity would weaken us. They thought restrictions would force us to accept their judgment and wait centuries for another chance. They don't understand the most fundamental aspect of human nature." "What's that, Madam President?" Daniel asked. Elizabeth smiled, and it was not a gentle expression. "We thrive when people tell us we can't do something. The Council just gave us the motivation to prove them catastrophically wrong. General Sullivan, what's the status of Project Frontier?" Marcus pulled up a star chart showing hundreds of systems beyond Council space. "Ready to begin immediately, Madam President. We identified 700 potential colony sites in unexplored territory. The Council has no claim to any of them." Helen added her report. "Our shipyards can produce colony vessels at triple our current rate if we prioritize production. We have enough volunteers to fill 50 ships within 6 months." Elizabeth nodded slowly. "Then here's what we're going to do. If the Council won't let us join their civilization, we'll build our own. We'll expand into every system they've overlooked. We'll develop technology they never imagined. We'll create an empire that makes their precious Council look like a social club. And when they finally realize what they've done, when they see what humanity becomes when pushed into a corner, they'll understand their mistake. But by then, it will be far too late for them to do anything about it." 5 years had passed since the Council delivered their verdict, and the transformation of humanity defied everything the alien species thought they understood about Earth. Commander Lisa Grant stood on the bridge of the ESS Valiant, watching through the main viewport as 49 other colony ships assembled in formation around her vessel. Each she carried 10,000 colonists, complete family units who had volunteered to leave Earth behind and build new lives among the stars. The scale of the operation would have seemed impossible just a decade ago, but the Council's rejection had unified humanity in ways that centuries of earthbound politics never could. Lisa adjusted her uniform and glanced at the crew stations surrounding her command chair. Every person on this bridge had trained for 3 years specifically for this mission. Navigation Officer Kevin Torres monitored the jump coordinates with steady hands. Science Officer Patricia Moore reviewed the data they had collected on their destination system. Communications Officer Sam Mitchell maintained contact with the other ships in the fleet. They were ready. Humanity was ready. All ships report green across the board, Commander, Kevin announced, his voice calm despite the historic nature of what they were about to do. Jump drives are charged and synchronized. We can depart on your order. Lisa took one last look at Earth through the viewport. The blue and white sphere had been humanity's home for its entire existence, but now it would become just one world among many. She thought about the council members who believed humans would meekly accept their restrictions, never imagining that denial would spark the greatest expansion in human history. Send the departure signal to Earth Control, Lisa ordered. Then engage jump drives on my mark. All ships, this is Valiant Actual. Today we prove that humanity doesn't need permission to reach for the stars. Today we begin building something the galaxy has never seen before. Mark. The universe folded around the fleet as 50 ships activated their jump drives simultaneously. For 3 seconds that felt like 3 hours. Lisa experienced the strange sensation of existing in multiple places at once. Then reality snapped back into focus and the Valiant emerged in a star system humanity had designated as New Haven. Patricia was already scanning the system before the jump disorientation fully cleared. Confirming initial survey data. Fourth planet shows breathable atmosphere, liquid water, and no signs of intelligent life. Gravity is 0.97 Earth standard. Temperature ranges are within acceptable parameters. Commander, it's perfect. Lisa allowed herself a smile. Then let's make it home. All ships begin orbital insertion. Survey teams prepare for surface deployment. The colonization of New Haven proceeded with remarkable efficiency. Within 6 hours of arrival, the first shuttles touched down on a broad plain near a river that reminded Lisa of the Missouri back on Earth. Prefabricated habitat modules came next, their automated systems unfolding into structures that could house families, while permanent buildings were constructed. By the end of the first day, New Haven had a population center with power generation, water purification, and basic medical facilities. Lisa walked through the main street of what would become the colony's first town, 3 days after landing. Children played in the dirt while their parents worked on construction projects. Engineers debated the best locations for industrial facilities. Farmers tested the soil composition and discussed which Earth crops would adapt best to local conditions. Everyone moved with purpose, driven by the knowledge that they were building something entirely their own. Commander Grant, you have an incoming transmission from Earth, Sam informed her through her communicator. It's Admiral Christopher Blake. Lisa found a quiet spot and accepted the call. Christopher's face appeared on her handheld display and he was smiling. Lisa, I'm looking at the reports from New Haven. You've accomplished in 3 days what the Council probably thought would take you 3 months. Well done. The colonists are motivated, sir, Lisa replied. They know what's at stake. Have the other fleets launched yet? Christopher's smile widened. That's why I'm calling. Fleet 7 departed yesterday. Fleet 8 leaves tomorrow. By the end of this month, we'll have active colony operations in 17 different systems, and every single one of them is outside Council space, in territory they never bothered to explore because they were too comfortable with what they already had. Lisa felt a surge of pride. 17 systems in 5 years. The Council thought isolation would contain us. Instead, they gave us motivation, Christopher agreed, and they gave us something even more valuable than that. They gave us a reason to innovate. Because we couldn't rely on their technology or their guidance, we had to develop everything ourselves. Our jump drives are faster than theirs. Our life support systems are more efficient. Our construction methods are more adaptable. We've made more technological progress in 5 years than we made in the previous 50. The conversation shifted to logistics and resource allocation, but Lisa's mind kept returning to Christopher's words. The Council had meant their restrictions as punishment, but humanity had transformed that punishment into advantage. Without access to established trade networks, humans built their own. Without Council oversight limiting their development, humans experimented freely. Without the burden of conforming to Council standards, humans created solutions that worked better for human needs. 6 months after the initial landing, New Haven's population had grown to 50,000. New shuttles arrived weekly, bringing more colonists and supplies from Earth. The town had become a city. The city had spawned satellite settlements. Fields of Earth crops stretched to the horizon. interspersed with careful preservation zones for native vegetation. Factories produced tools and equipment. Schools educated the first generation of children born beyond Earth. New Haven was thriving. Lisa had transitioned from ship commander to colonial administrator, a role she had never expected to enjoy but found deeply satisfying. She was reviewing expansion proposals when Patricia entered her office with an excited expression. "Commander, you need to see this," Patricia said, pulling up a holographic display. "We've been analyzing the mineral surveys from the northern continent. There are deposits of rare elements there that would cost a fortune to extract on Earth. Elements that the Council species consider extremely valuable. If we establish mining operations, New Haven could become one of the wealthiest colonies in human space within 2 years." Lisa studied the data carefully. "What about environmental impact?" "Minimal if we use the new extraction techniques Helen Price developed," Patricia assured her. "We can pull out what we need while leaving the ecosystem intact. It's exactly the kind of responsible development we promised ourselves we would practice." "Then let's do it," Lisa decided. "Draft the proposal and send it to Earth for approval. And Patricia, make sure we're documenting everything. Someday the Council is going to notice what we're building out here. When they do, I want them to see that humanity doesn't just expand. We improve everything we touch." Back on Earth, Admiral Christopher Blake stood in the command center that coordinated humanity's growing colonial empire. Holographic displays showed the status of every human settlement beyond the solar system. New Haven glowed green, indicating full operational status. Riverside showed yellow, still in development phase but progressing well. Forge Prime pulsed with industrial activity markers. Freedom Station reported successful agricultural yields. The map looked like a constellation of human achievement, each point of light representing thousands of people building new lives. His aide, Lieutenant Karen Phillips, approached with a data pad. "Sir, the shipyard reports are in. Production is ahead of schedule. We'll have capacity to launch 3 new fleets next quarter instead of the 2 we originally planned." Christopher nodded, his eyes never leaving the map. "Approve it. And Karen, I want you to compile a comprehensive report on everything we've accomplished since the Council's rejection. Population numbers, technological advances, economic output, everything. Make it detailed and make it impressive." Karen looked puzzled. "Sir, is this for internal review?" "No," Christopher replied. "This is for the day when the Council finally pays attention to what humanity has been doing out here." They thought we would shrink away and wait for their approval. Instead, we've built an empire. And when they realize what we've become, I want them to understand exactly how badly they miscalculated. On New Haven, Lisa stood on a hill overlooking the city as the local sun set in shades of purple and gold that Earth's sky had never shown. Her communicator chimed with reports from the other colonies, each one sharing news of progress and growth. Humanity had been exiled from the Council, cast out like unwanted children. But those unwanted children had grown strong in the wilderness, building something that would make their rejectors wonder if they had made the greatest mistake in galactic history. Lisa smiled as the first stars appeared in New Haven's sky. Somewhere out there, the Council conducted its business, comfortable in their established order. They had no idea that humanity's empire was spreading through the darkness, claiming world after world, growing stronger with each passing day. By the time they noticed, it would be far too late to stop what they had started. The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with heated debate as Councillor Vren of the Kashari Collective presented his findings to the assembled representatives. His tentacles rippled with agitation as he manipulated the holographic display, showing star charts marked with human colonies that now numbered 32 systems. The other council members watched in very states of concern and disbelief as the scope of human expansion became clear. "This is unprecedented," Vren declared, his chemical signals translated for all species present. "When we restricted humanity to their home system 5 years ago, they controlled exactly one world. Now they have established thriving settlements across 32 systems, all beyond our territorial borders. Their fleet consists of over 400 vessels, ranging from colony ships to what our intelligence suggests are military craft of considerable capability. They have developed jump drive technology that surpasses our own in speed and efficiency. Most concerning of all, they are attracting refugees and independent species to their colonies, offering opportunities that these beings cannot find within Council space." The High Chancellor of the Velthrians shifted behind his crystalline barrier, light refracting through his body in patterns that indicated troubled thoughts. How did we fail to notice this expansion until now? A Talvori representative ruffled her feathers in what passed for embarrassment among her species. We were not watching. Humans were restricted from council space, so we assumed they would remain confined to their system. We never imagined they would expand so aggressively into unexplored territory. Our monitoring focused inward on council affairs, not outward into the frontier regions. They are building an empire, a delegate from the Marathi enclave observed. And they are doing it faster than any species in recorded history. This represents a significant shift in galactic power dynamics. The debate continued for hours, with some representatives arguing that humanity posed a threat that needed to be addressed militarily, while others suggested that perhaps the Council's initial judgment had been too harsh. Finally, the Talvori ambassador raised her voice above the others, her clicking harmonics cutting through the noise. We have two options, she stated flatly. We can treat humanity as an enemy and risk conflict with a species that has proven remarkably resourceful and determined. Or we can acknowledge that our isolation strategy failed and attempt diplomatic engagement. I propose we send a delegation to human space and open formal negotiations. The vote was closer than anyone expected, but the diplomatic approach won by a narrow margin. 3 days later, a council delegation departed for human space, traveling to coordinates that intelligence reports identified as a major human colony, world called Riverside. Governor Andrew Carter received the notification of the approaching council delegation with barely concealed amusement. He sat in his office on Riverside, a thriving world that had grown from 3,000 initial colonists to a population of 90,000 in just 4 years. Through his window he could see the bustling streets of the capital city, where humans worked alongside Fenric traders and Zoltan craftspeople, species that had chosen to leave council space for the opportunities humanity offered. Andrew composed a message to Earth, marking it for immediate attention from President Elizabeth Hart. Madam President, the Council has finally noticed us. They want to talk. I recommend we make them understand exactly how much things have changed. Elizabeth's response arrived within the hour, and Andrew could practically hear the satisfaction in her written words. Agreed. Accept their delegation, but do it on our terms. Show them everything we've built. Let them see what humanity becomes when we're free to pursue our own path. And Andrew, make sure Ambassador Daniel Brooks is present. He deserves to be there when the Council comes to us instead of the other way around. 2 weeks later, the Council delegation's ship entered orbit around Riverside. The 3 representatives included a Velthrian observer, a Kashiri diplomat, and the Talvori ambassador who had pushed for this meeting. As their shuttle descended toward the planetary capital, they saw sprawling cities connected by efficient transportation networks, agricultural zones using both Earth and alien farming techniques, and industrial complexes that seemed to hum with productivity. The shuttle landed at a facility specifically constructed for this meeting, a building that combined human architectural sensibilities with practical design elements. Andrew Carter waited at the entrance, flanked by security personnel who maintained respectful but alert postures. Behind him stood Ambassador Daniel Brooks, wearing the same formal diplomatic attire he had worn 5 years earlier when the Council rejected humanity. The Talvori ambassador was the first to exit the shuttle, her feathered body moving with the careful dignity her species was known for. She studied the building and the surrounding cityscape before speaking through her translation device. Governor Carter, I am Ambassador Senna. Thank you for receiving our delegation. Welcome to Riverside, Andrew replied smoothly. Welcome to what humanity has built in the 5 years since the Council decided we weren't ready to join galactic civilization. The subtle emphasis on the Council's past judgment was not lost on Senna. She clicked softly before responding. We have come to discuss the current situation and explore possibilities for improved relations between the Council and humanity's growing presence in this region of space. Daniel stepped forward, and Senna recognized him immediately. For a moment there was uncomfortable silence as both beings remembered their previous encounter in the Council chamber. Then Daniel spoke, his voice carrying none of the supplication it had held during his last appearance before Council representatives. Ambassador Senna, 5 years ago I stood before the Council and asked for humanity to be given a chance. I was told we were too young, too aggressive, too unpredictable. I was told we needed 500 years to mature. I see you've decided not to wait quite that long. Senna's feathers ruffled slightly. Circumstances have changed. We have observed your expansion and believe dialogue would benefit all parties involved. Circumstances have indeed changed, Andrew agreed. Please come inside. We have much to discuss. The conference room offered panoramic views of the city below. The council delegates could see human children playing in parks alongside young Fenric. They could see mixed-species work crews constructing new buildings. They could see spacecraft of various designs taking off from the commercial spaceport, carrying goods to and from other human colonies and independent trading posts. It was a vision of diversity and cooperation that seemed to contradict everything the council had assumed about humanity. The Kashari representative spoke first once they were seated. Your expansion has been remarkable. We counted 32 colony worlds in your network. How many people have left Earth to settle these new worlds? 300 million at last count, Andrew replied casually. We have another 200 million scheduled for relocation over the next 2 years. Earth's population is actually declining as people choose to start new lives on the frontier. The Velthrian observer's crystalline form flickered with light patterns indicating surprise. 300 million in 5 years? Most species take centuries to achieve that level of colonization. Daniel allowed himself a small smile. Most species don't have the motivation you gave us. When you told humanity we couldn't be part of your council, you issued a challenge. Humans respond very well to challenges. Senna leaned forward, her voice taking on a more serious tone. Governor Carter, Ambassador Brooks, let me be direct. The council made its decision based on information and assumptions that we now recognize may have been incomplete. We saw humanity's conflicts and resource consumption and concluded you were not ready for membership. We did not consider that those very qualities, when properly directed, would drive such rapid development. You saw problems, Andrew said. We saw problems too. That's why we fixed them. Every human colony operates under strict environmental protocols. Our councils include representatives from all species living within our borders. We have established trade agreements based on mutual benefit rather than exploitation. We did all the things you wanted us to do, but we did them ourselves, without waiting for your permission. The meeting continued for hours as both sides carefully explored the possibilities of formal diplomatic relations. The council delegates expressed concern about humanity's military buildup, and Andrew countered by showing them evidence of pirate attacks on human convoys that necessitated defensive capabilities. They questioned humanity's rapid technological advancement, and Daniel explained that necessity had driven innovation in ways comfortable reliance on council technology never could. As the sun set over Riverside, casting orange and red light through the conference room windows, Senna finally addressed the core issue. The council would like to extend and offer a formal recognition to humanity's colonial network. We cannot reverse our previous decision immediately, but we can establish official channels of communication and begin the process of integration. Elizabeth Hart joined the conversation via holographic projection at that moment, her presence filling one end of the conference table. Ambassador Senna, I appreciate the council's willingness to recognize reality. However, you need to understand something fundamental. 5 years ago, humanity wanted to join your council because we thought it would give us access to the galaxy. We've since learned we don't need your permission for that. We've built our own network, our own economy, our own alliances. So if the council wants diplomatic relations with humanity, we welcome that. But we're not petitioners anymore. We're equals. Any relationship between us starts from that understanding. The council delegates exchanged glances, communicating through species-specific gestures and signals. Finally, Senna spoke. We understand, President Hart. The galaxy has changed, and the council must change with it. We came here expecting to negotiate with a young species eager for our approval. Instead, we find an established power that has proven its capabilities through action rather than words. Perhaps this is how all first contacts should proceed, with mutual respect rather than hierarchical assumptions. Andrew stood and gestured toward the windows. Then let's start building something better than what came before. The council has centuries of experience and knowledge. Humanity has fresh perspectives and new approaches. Together, we might create something neither of us could achieve alone. But it has to be partnership, not supervision. As the council delegation departed that evening, heading back to their ship in orbit, Daniel stood beside Andrew watching the city lights come on across Riverside. 5 years ago, I thought humanity's dream of joining the galaxy died in that council chamber. I was wrong. We didn't join their galaxy. We brought the galaxy to us. Dr. Nathan Cole watched the quantum field stabilizers hum to life in the testing facility on Forge Prime, humanity's primary industrial world located in a resource-rich system, 3 jumps from Earth. The massive complex stretched for kilometers in every direction, filled with research laboratories, manufacturing plants, and testing grounds where humanity's brightest minds pushed the boundaries of what technology could achieve. Nathan had spent 7 years developing the quantum jump drive that now powered up before him, a system that would revolutionize faster-than-light travel across the galaxy. Engineer Rachel Bennett monitored the power readings from her console, her eyes tracking numbers that climbed steadily toward operational threshold. Energy levels are stable at 95%. Quantum entanglement holding at optimal coherence. Nathan, I think we actually did it this time. Nathan allowed himself a cautious smile as the drive reached full power without any of the cascade failures that had plagued earlier prototypes. Run a full diagnostic sweep. If everything checks out, we can attempt a test jump tomorrow. Rachel, do you realize what this means? The Council's fastest ships take 6 weeks to cross from one side of their territory to the other. With this drive, we can make the same journey in 8 days. The implications went far beyond simple speed improvements. Faster travel meant better communication between human colonies. It meant rapid response to emergencies. It meant trade routes that could span the galaxy efficiently. Most importantly, it meant humanity would control the most advanced propulsion technology in known space, developed entirely without Council assistance or oversight. The test jump the following day succeeded beyond expectations. A small unmanned probe equipped with the quantum drive vanished from Forge Prime and reappeared at a beacon station 15 light-years away in less than 4 hours. The journey that would have taken a conventional jump drive 2 days had been reduced to a fraction of that time. Within a week, every human shipyard received specifications for retrofitting existing vessels with the new technology. While scientists on Forge Prime celebrated their breakthrough, Fleet Admiral Victoria Ross stood in the orbital shipyard above Earth, observing the construction of humanity's first true battleship. The vessel stretched 2 kilometers from bow to stern, its hull plating composed of composite materials that could withstand impacts that would shatter Council warship armor. Weapon systems lined its flanks, advanced railguns and particle beam arrays capable of devastating firepower. The ship represented a statement of capability, a message to the galaxy that humanity could defend itself against any threat. Victoria activated her communicator, broadcasting to the assembly of officers and crew members gathered in the shipyard's observation deck. This vessel will be designated ESS Titan. She represents not aggression but security. The Council believed restricting us would keep us weak. Instead, every challenge we faced forced us to become stronger. Every obstacle taught us to innovate. Today we launch a ship that no power in this galaxy can match, and we do it not to conquer, but to protect everything humanity has built. The Titan's completion ceremony drew representatives from every human colony. Families who had left Earth years ago returned to witness the culmination of humanity's military development. Children born on distant worlds stared in awe at the massive vessel. Veterans who had served in humanity's early defense fleets wiped tears from their eyes, seeing how far their service had carried the species. Captain Ryan Foster received command of the Titan, a responsibility he accepted with solemn awareness of what the ship represented. His orders were clear. Patrol human space, respond to threats, and demonstrate to anyone watching that humanity's expansion came with the capability to defend what had been built. The Titan would never fire first, but it would ensure no enemy fired twice. Yet the true strength of humanity's growing empire was neither technological nor military. On Earth, Director of Colonial Affairs Laura Gibson reviewed reports that filled her with pride and wonder. Human colonies attracted thousands of beings from species outside the Council's influence, refugees and fortune seekers who heard stories of opportunity and fairness in human space. The Fenric, a species known for their engineering skills, had established entire communities on human worlds. The Zoltan, master craftspeople whose artistry was unmatched, created works on human colonies that drew buyers from across the galaxy. The Ven, a nomadic species that had struggled to find acceptance elsewhere, discovered that humans judged beings by their actions rather than their origins. Laura compiled the statistics with satisfaction. 23 non-human species now lived within the human colonial network. Mixed species communities functioned smoothly under legal systems that guaranteed equal rights regardless of origin. Trade between human and non-human enterprises flourished. Cultural exchange programs introduced human art and music to alien audiences, while bringing alien traditions to human schools. The empire humanity built was not one of domination, but of inclusion. We're becoming something the Council never imagined, Laura told her staff during a planning meeting. They saw us as a single species too dangerous to integrate. We're proving that integration works when it's based on respect rather than hierarchy. Every species that joins us makes our civilization stronger. Every culture that shares with us enriches our understanding. We're not just building an empire, we're building a model for how different beings can thrive together. The economic power of human space grew exponentially as innovation drove new industries. On the mining world of Sterling, extractors pulled rare elements from asteroid fields using techniques that minimized waste and environmental damage. On the agricultural world of Harvest, farmers combined earth crops with compatible alien varieties to create hybrid foods that fed billions. On the technology hub of Innovation Station, researchers from multiple species collaborated on projects ranging from medical advances to entertainment systems. Human merchants traveled trade routes that extended far beyond the original colonies, carrying goods to independent stations and even to the edges of Council space. They brought back not just profits but information about galactic affairs, news of political shifts and opportunities for expansion. Human currency gained value as other species recognized its stability. Human products earned reputation for quality and reliability. The economic influence of humanity spread like ripples across a pond, touching systems and species that had never heard of Earth a decade earlier. Jacob Wells, a merchant captain who had started with a single cargo hauler and now commanded a fleet of 12 vessels, reflected on the changes during a stop at Freedom Station. 10 years ago, I was hauling construction materials between Earth and Luna. Now I trade with species from 30 different star systems. I carry Fenric tools to human colonies and human electronics to Zoltan settlements. Last month, I delivered medical supplies to a Ven refugee convoy, and they paid me in cultural artifacts worth twice what I charged. This is what humanity has become. We're not conquerors. We're connectors. We bring people together and everyone benefits. Back on Earth, President Elizabeth Hart met with Admiral Christopher Blake, Dr. Nathan Cole, Fleet Admiral Victoria Ross, and Director Laura Gibson in a secure briefing room. Holographic displays showed the current state of human civilization, 48 colony worlds, a population exceeding 500 million beyond Earth, a fleet of over 600 vessels, technological capabilities that surpassed Council standards in multiple fields, an economic output that rivaled some of the smaller Council species. 8 years ago, the Council rejected us, Elizabeth said, studying the data with obvious satisfaction. They thought we were too aggressive, too unpredictable, too young. They restricted our expansion and expected us to accept their judgment meekly. Instead, we've built this, an empire that spans dozens of systems, a military that can defend our eye, Hanarists, technology that makes us equals or superiors to any species in the galaxy, and most importantly, a society that welcomes anyone willing to contribute and follow our laws. We did everything they said we couldn't do, and we did it better than they imagined possible. Christopher pointed to intelligence reports showing Council members discussing humanity's rise with increasing concern. They're paying attention now. Some of them see us as a threat. Others see us as an opportunity. But all of them recognize that the galaxy has changed. We're not the struggling species begging for acceptance anymore. We're a power they have to acknowledge. Nathan added his perspective as a scientist who had worked tirelessly to ensure humanity's technological edge. The quantum drive is just the beginning. We have teams developing artificial intelligence systems, quantum computing networks, and biological engineering techniques that will push us even further ahead. Every year that passes, the gap between what we can do and what the Council can do widens. They relied on established technology for centuries while we innovate constantly because we have to. Victoria spoke with the measured confidence of someone who commanded significant military force. The Titan launches next month. We have plans for 3 more battleships in the construction queue. Our defense grid covers every major colony. Our patrol routes extend to the edges of explored space. No one threatens human interests without facing consequences. But we've never initiated aggression. Every action we've taken has been defensive or exploratory. That distinction matters. Laura finished the assessment with the human element that made everything else possible. Our strength isn't just ships and weapons and technology. It's the people who believe in what we're building. It's the colonies where humans and aliens work side by side. It's the children growing up thinking it's normal to have classmates from 6 different species. It's the merchants and farmers and artists who carry human values across the stars. The Council thought they were containing a threat. They created something better than their own civilization. And deep down, I think some of them are starting to realize that. The emergency transmission from the Galactic Council arrived at Earth Command during what should have been a routine morning briefing. Admiral Christopher Blake watched the holographic message with growing alarm, as the Velthrian High Chancellor's crystalline form flickered with patterns that indicated extreme distress. The message was simple and desperate. The Xerxian horde had invaded Council space with overwhelming force, and the Council fleet was being systematically destroyed. Christopher immediately forwarded the transmission to President Elizabeth Hart, who arrived at command within 20 minutes. She stood beside him as they reviewed the tactical data the Council had included with their plea for assistance. 50 Council worlds were under attack. 3 had already fallen completely. The Xerxians, a nomadic warrior species that lived for conquest, had brought a fleet of thousands against the Council's peacekeeping force that had never been designed for actual warfare. "They're asking us to help them," Elizabeth said quietly, her voice carrying a mixture of emotions that Christopher understood completely. The same Council that exiled us, that restricted our growth, that told us we were too aggressive to join their civilization. Now they want our aggressive nature to save them. Christopher pulled up more detailed reports showing battle footage that made clear just how outmatched the Council forces were. "Madam President, I won't pretend I don't feel some satisfaction seeing them come to us for help. But those are billions of innocent civilians being killed. Whatever we think about the Council's government, the people on those worlds don't deserve what's happening to them." Elizabeth nodded slowly, her decision already forming. "You're right, we help. Not because the Council deserves it, but because it's the right thing to do. Because humanity is better than holding grudges when lives are at stake. And because this is our chance to show the galaxy exactly who we are." "How fast can you mobilize the fleet?" "The Titan and her battle group can be ready in 6 hours, Christopher replied. "I can have 50 battleships, 200 cruisers, and full support vessels assembled within 24 hours. It'll be the largest military operation humanity has ever undertaken." Elizabeth's expression hardened with resolve. "Then do it. Send everything we have. Show the Council what humanity becomes when someone threatens innocent lives. And Christopher, make sure Daniel Brooks goes with the fleet. He should be there when we save the civilization that rejected him." 20 hours later, the human fleet assembled in Earth orbit presented a sight that would have seemed impossible just a decade earlier. The ESS Titan dominated the formation, flanked by her sister ships Justice and Liberty. Around them, hundreds of vessels bearing the insignia of humanity's united fleet prepared for combat. Crews that had trained for this moment ran final systems checks. Weapons were armed. Jump drives were charged. The fleet was ready. Fleet Admiral Victoria Ross stood on the Titan's bridge reviewing the battle plan one final time. The Council had provided coordinates for their besieged world of Talvor Prime, a planet of 8 billion inhabitants currently under direct assault by Xerxian forces. Intelligence suggested the enemy had committed roughly 3,000 ships to the attack, confident that Council defenses would crumble before them. "All ships report ready for jump." "Admiral," her operations officer reported, "we have green lights across the fleet." Victoria opened a fleet-wide channel, her voice carrying to every human vessel preparing to risk everything for beings who had once rejected them. "This is Admiral Ross to all ships. Today we fight not for territory or resources. We fight because the strong have a responsibility to protect those who cannot protect themselves. The Council once judged humanity too violent for civilized company. Today we show them that our capacity for violence is matched by our capacity for mercy. Today we prove that humanity fights not to conquer, but to defend. All ships jump on my mark." The human fleet vanished from Earth orbit and reappeared in the Talvor system to find a scene of devastation. Xerxian warships swarmed around Talvor Prime like insects around dying prey. The orbital defense platforms were destroyed. The few remaining Council ships fought desperately but hopelessly. The planet's surface showed scorch marks where Xerxian bombardment had already killed millions. Captain Lisa Grant, now commanding the heavy cruiser ESS Defiance, assessed the tactical situation with the calm efficiency her years of service had taught her. Enemy fleet outnumbers us 5-1, but their formations are sloppy. They weren't expecting resistance. All weapons ready, waiting for your order, Admiral. Victoria studied the enemy positions for exactly 3 seconds before making her decision. All ships break by squadrons and engage at will. Focus fire on their capital ships. Show them what happens when they threaten the innocent. Execute. The human fleet hit the Xerxian formation like a hammer striking glass. The Titan's main railguns fired first, each shot crossing the distance between ships in seconds and punching through Xerxian armor that had never been designed to withstand such kinetic force. Particle beams from human cruisers swept across enemy destroyers, cutting them apart with precision that came from years of tactical training. Human fighters, faster and more maneuverable than anything the Xerxians had encountered, swarmed their larger vessels and struck at vulnerable points with devastating accuracy. The Xerxians tried to respond, turning their massive fleet to face this unexpected threat. But human tactics had evolved far beyond the simple mass assault strategies the nomadic warriors employed. Human ships moved in coordinated patterns, covering each other's approaches and retreats. They concentrated fire on single targets, overwhelming shields and armor before moving to the next victim. They used the debris of destroyed enemy ships as cover, hiding behind wreckage until they could strike again. Commander Jake Morrison piloted his fighter through a storm of enemy fire, his squadron following his lead as they targeted a Xerxian battlecruiser's engine section. Remember your training. Fast approach, concentrated fire, immediate withdrawal. Don't try to be heroes. Dead pilots don't win wars. His squadron executed the attack flawlessly, their missiles impacting within milliseconds of each other, and creating a chain reaction that tore through the battlecruiser's power systems. The massive enemy ship went dark and began drifting, no longer a threat. Jake's squadron was already moving toward their next target before the explosions finished rippling through their first victim. On the Titan's bridge, Victoria watched the battle unfold with satisfaction. The numerical advantage the Xerxians possessed meant nothing against superior technology and tactics. For every human ship that took damage, 10 enemy vessels were destroyed. The Xerxians had built their reputation conquering species that relied on static defenses and predictable strategies. They had no experience fighting an enemy that moved like humanity did, that struck with such coordinated precision, that refused to give them any tactical advantage. Enemy fleet is breaking formation, her tactical officer reported. They're attempting to retreat, Victoria's voice carried across the fleet channel with absolute authority. Do not let them escape. Pursue and destroy. We end this threat today. The battle for Talvor Prime lasted 6 hours and ended with the complete destruction of the Xerxian attack force. Not a single enemy vessel escaped to report what they had encountered. Human losses were minimal. 3 cruisers damaged but repairable, 2 destroyers lost with their crews and various fighters that could be replaced. The disparity was so overwhelming that even Victoria found it almost difficult to believe. As the last Xerxian ship exploded under concentrated human fire, Lisa opened a channel to the surviving Council Defense Coordinator on Talvor Prime. Council Defense, this is Captain Grant of the human fleet. The enemy has been eliminated. Your world is secure. We're deploying medical and reconstruction teams to the surface. Help is here. The response came through broken sobs of relief from a Talvori officer who had watched his world burn. Human fleet, we register your message. We thought we were going to die. All of us, thank you. Thank you. 3 days after the battle, a formal ceremony took place on Talvor Prime's surface, in a plaza that had been hastily cleared of debris. Representatives from every council species attended, along with the leaders of humanity's fleet. President Elizabeth Hart arrived via special transport, bringing with her Ambassador Daniel Brooks. The Velthrian High Chancellor approached them with movements that seemed somehow humbled compared to the proud bearing he had displayed 10 years earlier. President Hart, Ambassador Brooks, on behalf of the Galactic Council and the 8 billion beings of Talvor Prime who live because of your intervention, I offer our deepest gratitude. We also offer our apology. 10 years ago, we judged your species by our fears rather than your potential. We were wrong. Humanity has proven itself not through submission to our standards, but through surpassing them. Daniel stood tall, no longer the supplicant who had begged for acceptance. High Chancellor, your apology is noted and appreciated. But understand that humanity has changed. We are no longer the species that sought your approval. We built our own civilization, made our own alliances, developed our own capabilities. We came to your aid not because we needed your gratitude, but because it was right. Elizabeth stepped forward, her voice carrying to all assembled. The Council denied us membership because you feared what humanity might become. You thought isolation would contain us. Instead, you gave us the freedom to become something greater than we might have been under your restrictions. We've built an empire of 48 worlds. We've created a society where 23 different species live in harmony. We've developed technology that pushes the boundaries of what's possible. And we've done it all while maintaining the values that make us human: compassion, innovation, and the belief that we grow stronger by lifting others up. The Talvori ambassador, Senna, who had visited human space 2 years earlier, spoke next. Perhaps this is how it should have been from the beginning. Not one species dominating others, but multiple powers working as equals. The Council has operated the same way for thousands of years. Maybe we needed someone to show us a better path. Victoria approached the group and addressed the Council representatives directly. We proved today that humanity can fight when necessary. Our fleet saved your world because it was under attack. But understand this: we don't seek to replace the Council. We seek to work alongside it. The galaxy is vast enough for multiple approaches to civilization. Where the Council values tradition and stability, humanity values innovation and growth. Where you move carefully, we adapt quickly. These differences make us stronger together than either of us would be alone. The treaty negotiations that followed reshaped galactic politics in ways that historians would study for centuries. Humanity received full recognition as an independent power equal to the Council itself. The human colonial network was acknowledged as sovereign territory. Trade agreements opened markets on both sides. Cultural exchange programs began immediately. Most importantly, a mutual defense pact ensured that neither side would face future threats alone. On New Haven, Governor Andrew Carter watched the news broadcasts with a smile. The colony he had helped build from nothing now served as one of the diplomatic centers for human Council relations. Ships from Council space arrived daily, their crews eager to see what humanity had created. The children playing in the streets included humans Fenric, Zoltan, Ven, and now Talvori and Kashari, whose families had chosen to relocate to human space seeking opportunities. Daniel Brooks stood on a balcony overlooking the city and thought about the journey that had brought humanity here. 10 years ago, he had walked away from the Council chamber defeated, carrying the weight of rejection. Now he watched as Council ships docked peacefully at human stations, as former enemies became partners, as the galaxy learned that humanity's greatest strength was not aggression, but resilience. Elizabeth Hart's final words at the treaty signing echoed in his memory. You tried to exile us from your vision of civilization. Instead, you forced us to build our own. And in the end, both of our civilizations are better for it.